I must say I'm actually delighted to be here. I'm delighted that after having listened to Ola for most of yesterday, you actually decided to come back and endure another forum this morning. My name is Joe Peppard, and I've been at ESMT for just over 3 years. Prior to that, I spent over 20 years working at a university school in the UK, Cranfield School of Management, where I had a chair in information systems. And also ran a big information systems research centre. Why I sort of mention that in terms of information systems is that I sort of see my reference discipline as information systems. Although we're going to be talking about digital, we're going to be talking about technology, I'm very much coming at this challenge of digital from a managerial perspective. I've also been involved in this space for over 30 years. And you know, a lot of the conversations that I'm hearing taking place in boards and in C-suites in relation to digital, I heard them 30 years ago. And for me, I think that one of the greatest scams, if I can use that the technology vendors particularly have created is that somehow digital is something new. We talked yesterday about big data. Now, you may wonder, well, why are we talking about big data? And indeed, 10 years ago, anybody any idea what we called big data? Data. Data. We just called it data. And, not even small, we just called it data. And it was just, you know, a research analyst that worked for Gartner. One Friday evening had nothing to do, and you know was under pressure from his boss to come up with some new thought leadership, and he coined the phrase "big data." You know, companies have always struggled with their data. I mean, this challenge of trying to get the grips to get your data under control, to harness it, to leverage it, to seek out competitive opportunities with data and information, is enduring. Now again, we talk about analytics. In the past, what word did we use to characterize and describe analytics? Decision support systems. So in the 70s and 80s, organizations were talking about deploying and implementing decision support systems. Today, nobody talks about decision support systems. They talk about analytics, but they talk about them in exactly the same way as they did, in the 70s and 80s, when companies were looking to use the capabilities of the technology back then in order to help them make better decisions, in order to help them better understand their customers, their processes. Now, yes, the technology back in those days was a lot less advanced and had a lot less capability than it does today, but the challenge was exactly the same. And even, when we hear the word transformation, that big word transformation, like there's another word in English for transformation, it's called change. And again, this is an issue that organizations have struggled with throughout the decades in the context of their investments in information technology. It's sort of managing the change. And now we sort of tend not to use the label of change. We talk about, business or digital transformation. When I started studying the subject, we talked about IT-enabled change. Today, everybody's talking about user experience. Like in the 60s and 70s, there was a whole field within kind of computer science and information systems emerging called human-computer interaction. And of course, that's one of the concepts that emerged from that was user-friendliness. Remember the concept of user-friendliness? We don't talk about, is your system or your app user-friendly anymore. We talk about, what's the user experience like? So, I suppose my key point that I'm trying to make here is that a lot of these conversations that we're having today in the context of digital, we've been having them over the decades. And I think there's lots and lots of lessons that can be learned from the past, from both successes and failures. And really I want to share with you this morning some of them. But in particular, I'm going to focus on how do you actually build a strategy for digitization. And then more importantly, how do you make it work? Because I think, looking around this room, I would imagine that many of you have suffered in many ways from IT projects. IT projects that somehow either underachieved or failed. And so this is an issue that I want to address, because ultimately we build a strategy for digital, however we describe digital. We then have to execute on that. And that's going to involve projects and programs. It's going to involve technology. It's going to involve IT-enabled change. So how do we ensure that the projects and programs that result from this strategy are actually set up and managed in a way that actually will deliver the expected business outcomes? So again, that's what I will touch upon towards the latter part of this morning. Okay? So as a start, this was and again, I know quite a number of you in talking to you yesterday have MBAs. Michael Porter, as a professor at Harvard, is probably well known to a lot of you. His work, value chains, 5 forces analysis, so anybody that's done any work in strategy will be very, very familiar with the work of Michael and also some of his tools. He wrote an article, How Information Gives You a Competitive Advantage, that was published in Harvard Business Review. Anybody any idea what year he wrote this article? You may have even read it on your MBA. Last year? 10 years ago?
Maybe more.
2000? 1985. 1985. So, so he was talking about, first of all, highlighting that there was a great opportunity for organizations to harness the capabilities of technology in order to better manage their information, and in ways that may provide them with a source of competitive advantage. Let me read the first paragraph. Because if I read the first paragraph, you get a sense that what he was talking about back then is resonating with the conversations I'm sure you're hearing in your organizations. What he wrote was, most general managers, you guys here, know that the revolution is underway and few dispute its importance. As more and more of their investment capital is absorbed in information technology or digital and its effects, executives have a growing awareness that the technology can no longer be the exclusive terrain of the EDP or IS departments. Okay, your IT department. Back then, it was often called the EDP department. As they see their rivals use information for competitive advantage, i.e. they see the Googles of this world and the Facebooks, these executives recognize the need to become directly involved in the management of new technology. In the face of rapid change, however, they don't know how. Hence they come to a morning like this. Then this article aims to help the general managers respond to the challenges of the information revolution. Now, I believe that this is not a technology revolution. Yes, there's going to be some technology involved. And of course, the vendors, and apologies, I know Microsoft and I know IBM are in the audience here. Apologies to the vendors, but this is not a technology vendor. And as I said, this is sort of the scam that has been sort of created, that somehow this is about technology, and if you want to win the race in the digital world, it's all about buying technology, whatever that technology might be. Yes, you might have to buy some technology, but you really need to reorient your conversation around information. Because it's about information, it's about how your organization chooses to harness information both operationally, i.e. to run your business, and strategically in order to potentially identify opportunities to generate some advantage through using information. So that was back in 1985, over 30 years ago. You reckon that conversation is still happening today? Actually, and if you look back in the history of computing, does anybody here remember DEC? DEC, Digital Equipment Corporation. When was that founded? Some of you may have even worked for them. Okay, you wrote a program on DOS, yeah. Digital Equipment Corporation was founded in 1957. And Ken Olsen, one of the founders back then, he sort of had a view. He said, I don't want to be associated with computers. So I don't want to call this a computer company. He said, I want to call it a digital company. This was 1957. So even back then, there was a realization, at least among some visionaries, that this is not about computers. It's somehow about digital. And yet we've sort of seen this come full cycle. And of course, over the last number of years, digital again has come to the fore. So, key message one to take away is that, it's about information, not technology. And I was so glad that in the Financial Times a number of years ago, they actually highlighted that. Because it's all too easy to focus in on the technology. It's all too easy to focus in on the IT department, on the CIO, the IT director. And what I'm seeing happening in a lot of companies today in respect of digital and digital transformation is that companies, when I say companies, I mean leadership teams, CEOs, are abdicating responsibility for digital and the digital transformation journey of their organizations to their CDOs. So they're actually now creating a new position in the C-suite. So it's not just now the CIO, it's the Chief Digital Officer. And the Chief Digital Officer now is being given responsibility in order to somehow embrace digital and drive the digital transformation journey in their organizations. The research I've done, and the research that colleagues have also done, is very, very clear in its finding, is that digital is a team sport. And digital is not something that can be abdicated to one individual in the organization. Yes, a CDO can actually provide support and indeed possibly should be a member of that leadership team. But if the initiative is going to actually have real traction, is going to deliver real positive outcomes, it's got to be seen as a collective responsibility. I did some work a number of years ago for ASDA. Anybody that's been to the UK will recognise ASDA as a big retailer. They have about 600 stores right across the UK. They're actually owned by Walmart. And this lady commissioned me to do some consulting work for ASDA. At the time, she was the Chief Financial Officer. She's actually now the Chief Operating Officer of Walmart and is being tipped to be the future CEO of Walmart. But she said to me something at the time, which I thought was very, very revealing coming from a CFO, Chief Financial Officer. She said to me, Joe, she says, information drives this business, but we have made it complex for a company that basically buys and sells baked beans. And that's, as a retailer, any retailer, that's essentially what you do. She was saying, we buy in bulk. We buy a container load of beans, tins of beans from Heinz, and then we sell them to individuals in our stores. But she said, we have made it so complex over the years, over the decades, in terms of our processes, in terms of our information, our systems, that now the technology, which, and again, think about why companies deploy technology. It's to help them manage and control their information in many cases. But actually, that very technology, the irony is, today is now causing them massive problems. I don't know if our friend from Bosch is here. Oh, you are? Okay. Do you recognize this? Do you recognize this?
Of course.
Yeah, it's an XDK. It's a Bosch. It's a top-of-the-range Bosch sensor. It's a piece of technology. But it doesn't do anything. And I think this is the key. This is the key point. It doesn't do anything. First of all, it has capabilities. It has capabilities to, as a sensor, to measure temperature, humidity. It's an accelerometer. So there's a lot of capability there. But on its own, it doesn't do it. So if you buy a container load of these sensors, that's not going to make you suddenly, a leader in Industry 4.0. Yeah, so buying a container load of these sensors won't make you a leader in Industry 4.0. In the same way, buying a suite of SAP software won't make you a leader in Industry 4.0. The challenge is figuring out how are you going to harness the capabilities of a technology like this. So yesterday, Maximilian was talking about at the 365 FarNet, how they're using sensors and sometimes thousands of sensors on a farm to collect data. Of course, the big challenge is, first of all, figuring out what data you need to collect. And then when you collect that data, it's kind of figuring out how you're going to use the data. So this is a really, really great example of the ingenuity that some people have in the context of harnessing technology. This is the city of Boston. And in a lot of cities that exist in sort of the snow belt, over the winter, lots of snow, lots of frost. And when the spring comes, you tend to find that there's lots of potholes. I noticed here don't get very much snow here in Istanbul, but I did notice a lot of potholes. So in the spring, there's lots of potholes appear, and engineers spend quite a few weeks early in the springtime identifying where all the potholes are. So they literally drive around the city with maps and they identify all the potholes. They then decide, okay, where the priority potholes are, and then they send out teams to repair the damage. What the city of Boston have done is they said, okay, can we be a little bit innovative in how we use technology? And what they've done is they've actually taken, do I have it in your smartphone? And they said, actually, in your smartphone, there's actually an accelerometer. So what they've asked the citizens of Boston to do is to download an app, okay? So when you're driving to work in the morning, you go over a pothole, what happens? Okay, up and down. The accelerometer picks up, there's a hole here, or it picks up something. And of course, what the city's doing is, it's crowdsourcing potholes. So over a week, it can identify all the potholes around the city, and it also helps in prioritization. So some potholes will have tens of thousands of cars driving over them any one day. There'll be other potholes might only have 20 people, 20 cars. So it helps them now they prioritize the remedial work. So again, it's a very, very innovative use of technology. It's a very creative use of technology. But it's all about information, because the engineers, when they go out prior to this app, what were they doing? They were collecting information about where all the potholes were through their vision, and then they would have a map and they would mark it down. But again, some smart person or persons in the city of Boston came up with this ingenious way of collecting this information, making it available, doing some analytics, and making decisions about which potholes should be filled in first. I love this definition from MasterCard. MasterCard is a really interesting company. Most of you will probably have a kind of a MasterCard credit card, but today MasterCard really don't see themselves primarily as a credit card company. They see themselves as a technology company that happens at the moment to facilitate payments. Because in the payment space, there's tremendous amount of competition. Because ultimately, when you think about payments, when you think about money, it's really information. And this is why it's becoming very, very congested in terms of new entrants trying to get into this space. I'll talk a little bit more about payments later on in the session, but I just want to focus in on their definition of digital. They see it as innovating with and the use of information and technology. So here's a company that does recognize that yes, there's some technology, but it's very much about harnessing the capabilities to innovate with information. In the same way now that the city of Boston are using the accelerometer, that capability on smartphones to collect data that helps them better manage the city. So, digital is not technology. And the challenge is really figuring out, as a business, how are you going to harness the capabilities of the technologies, whatever that technology might be. Sensors. Today there's a lot of talk about the blockchain, for example. Again, the blockchain just brings certain capabilities. And of course, this is where all of the work is currently going on. It's banks, it's insurance companies, it's legal practices, trying to figure out how can we now harness the capabilities of blockchain technology, maybe to rethink or reimagine some of our processes, for example. Some are even looking for opportunities to harness the blockchain to provide them with a competitive advantage. So for me, digital has got two components. As I said, there is the technology side. And I sort of refer to that as the supply side. This is the supply side of the equation. The other side is how you're going to harness the capabilities of that technology. That's the demand side. And I make a very, very clear distinction between supply and demand, and I will throughout this morning. But also, I sort of use, again, language quite precisely. So when I'm talking about supply, I'm talking about technology, information technology, IT. And when I'm talking about demand, I'm talking about information systems. Information systems. And going back to what I said, my reference discipline is information systems. Today, you know, when we use the word systems in most companies, people immediately probably say, oh, think of IT systems. But systems have always existed in companies. They predate computers. You know, companies could not work without systems. In fact, households, your own household could not work. You have systems. We probably better today refer to systems maybe as processes. So over here we've got our kind of information and processes, our demand, and on the supply side is our technology. So as we'll see again later on this morning, I'll emphasize that, you know, it's possible to outsource to maybe a third party your supply side. Lots of companies have done it. But again, we know that the history of outsourcing is mixed. Some companies have great success, a lot of companies have struggled with outsourcing. And I think one of the reasons being is that companies, when they outsource, often outsource demand and supply, at least in their head. Okay, because a vendor, if you outsource to IBM, HP, whatever the vendor is, the vendor can only ever play on this side. Because you're still going to need a strategy for information systems. You're still going to need that strategy, that demand. You're still going to run projects and programs. IBM won't do that. They might help you, but you still need to execute on that strategy. You still need to think innovatively. Again, we know if you're looking through the history of outsourcing that, you know, most outsourcing agreements struggle to bring in innovation into the contract. So again, so this distinction between demand and supply can be very, very useful in terms of maybe better understanding why outsourcing arrangements can struggle to deliver the expected outcomes. But again, this is something I will come back to later on in the presentation. So what I've done is I've sort of set myself 3 objectives this morning. The first one is to, I think, give you a frame of reference. As I've said, I've been researching and teaching in this space for over 30 years. So I sort of see the problems, the challenges, the issues, the solutions in maybe a different way than most of you do in this room. So essentially what I want to do is I want to give you my pair of glasses if I can, so to give you that frame of reference. Secondly, I want to give you a language. Because again, I know from working with executives is that sometimes they struggle to have conversations about digital because they don't have the right language. So for example, now I've already introduced you to demand and supply. So even having those 2 concepts, I think, can be very, very powerful for executives. So that's my second objective, is to give you this language. And thirdly, I want to give you some frameworks, some tools that you can then use to help you have these conversations. So they're my 3 objectives. What I've done is I've divided my presentation into 3 parts. Not focusing in on each of those 3 objectives, but actually the first part I really want to just build on what Olaf presented yesterday to talk a little bit more about the strategic context of digital. Okay, talk a little bit about digital strategy. The second part, which will be the second hour, that's going to very much focus on how do you build a digital strategy. What does the process of building a digital strategy look like? And then the third and final part of the presentation, my final hour, is essentially how do you get this strategy to work? So how do you ensure that the investments that will emerge from your strategy are set up and run in such a way that the expected business outcomes are actually delivered? So they're the 3 sections of my presentation. Okay? So let's kind of, I suppose, start. Olaf talked to you yesterday about Rolls-Royce. I'm not going to dwell, you know, that shift from selling product to selling services. I just want to highlight the technology and the information piece. Because what we got here in every engine, so whether it's a Rolls-Royce engine now, whether it's a GE, whether it's a Pratt & Whitney engine, you have sensors, you know, up to 3,000 sensors operating in what Rolls-Royce engineers have referred to me as hostile environments. So massive, you know, 3,000 degree temperatures, but collecting data on the health. Again, it's quite interesting when you talk to some of the engineers in Rolls-Royce, this is the language they use. You know, they talk about the health of the engine. You know, we often talk about some of these wearables, you know, picking up data on our health. They talk about the health of the engine. Some of the data is sent to the pilot in the cockpit, but a lot of it is sent via satellite to a health monitoring centre in Derby in the UK, where engineers using prognostic, diagnostic technology as well as advanced analytics are using that data to make decisions about that engine, particularly in terms of maintenance, for example, because in the availability-based contract, the pressure is on Rolls-Royce to optimize the availability. Because if an engine becomes unavailable for whatever reason, because of the shift in risk back from the customer back to the OEM, Rolls-Royce then will have to pick up any of the additional costs. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of technology, and this is where, when we talk about digital strategy, this is where we then, you know, talk about the kind of the shaping effects of technology. Because we're all probably very used to the concept of alignment. We're probably all very used to the concept of, you know, technology enabling the execution of a strategy. But technology also enables, or should I say, shapes strategic options. So Rolls-Royce, yes, they had some variant of this value proposition going back to the 60s, but actually, to profitably deliver this value proposition of availability demands technology. So 10 years ago, let's say 12 years ago, the technology was not available to enable Rolls-Royce to really do this commercially in a profitable way. Today it is. And this is where, you know, as a business, you've got to, and again, it's something I'll come upon later on in the session, you know, we've got to be continually looking out into the environment for technologies, not for technology's sake, but trying to identify what new capabilities are there now available that we might harness that could potentially enable us to create possibly a new business model, for example. And this, I think, is a great example. Rolls-Royce, as I said, you know, they're using predictive analytics. So particularly using vibration analysis, collecting data from, let's say, from fan blades, for example, you know, they can predict, based on historical data, when components in the engines will fail. And as long as there is a window, they can then plan maintenance. So let's have a look at a little bit more at predictive analytics outside of engineering, in banking. This is Kim, okay? Kim has an account. She actually has a savings account with a particular bank. She also has a mortgage with that bank, okay? Now, traditionally, banks would sort of credit score Kim. So in the future, if Kim was looking for a loan, for example, and Kim went to this particular bank, they would have already made the decision as to what they were going to give her in terms of a loan amount and maybe an interest rate. So it's very reactive. Kim would go and talk to her manager. But with predictive analytics, banks and other financial institutions are trying to predict how Kim might behave in the future. So Kim uses her debit card and her credit card, yeah, like most of you here. The bank has all that data, okay? They analyze the data on an ongoing basis, and what they notice is that Kim is not buying kind of a lot of fashion, you know, dresses and whatever items. She historically does, but over the last 2 or 3 months, she hasn't been. Now, that doesn't mean anything in isolation, but it's a piece of data. They also notice that she's not buying petrol in her local petrol station, because they know where she lives. They have a postcode. They know where she buys her petrol because they have the postcode of the petrol station. They now know she's buying petrol elsewhere. On its own, doesn't mean very much. They also notice, when they analyze her purchases, that yes, she's not buying fashion, but actually she's buying a lot of furniture. Well, what I would argue that actually we need to also focus on the benefit side. That actually the problem for most companies is not how much they're spending on IT. The problem for most companies is their inability to realize value from that spend. Okay, let me repeat that. Okay, the problem for most companies is not their spend on IT.
actually maybe they should be spending more. That's not where the problem lies. The problem lies in their ability to realise value from that spend. That's where the big challenge lies. Not how much they spend, but their ability to realise value from that spend. Now, we don't have a slide, but this is going to take a while. If you had a blackboard, I could use the blackboard. But if we look at the relationship between technology spend and business benefits, most business executives assume there's a direct relationship between IT spend and business value. They believe that if we buy SAP, for example, or we buy something from Oracle, or we buy something from Microsoft, that somehow magically all the expected benefits will somehow appear. Okay, that's the sort of belief that most business managers have. Okay, and what do? What happens in most organizations is they actually build a plan in order to get the technology in. So most companies build a plan to deploy the technology. And IT departments, IT professionals are great at building technology deployment plans. Nice Gantt charts, lots of nice colours, lots of milestones. But just think about it. What you're really looking for are benefits. And I would ask you, how many of you have ever built a benefit realization plan? Have you ever built a plan to realize the benefits? I would say probably very few of you, if any. The latest piece of research I did across Europe was 7% of European companies building some sort of a plan to help them realize the benefits. Yes, they were all building plans to get the deployment, the technology deployed, but none of them, well, most of them did not build a plan to help them realize the benefits. So again, one of the takeaways I'd like you to maybe take from today is the importance of building a plan. And that's something I'm going to show you when the slides come back. How do you actually build a plan to help you realize the benefits from your investment? Now, if we look at change in an organization, because essentially the benefits from IT actually will come from the change. We got to recognize that a couple of things. That change is a process. Okay, change is not something that happens overnight. And the second piece to recognize in relation to change is that no two organizations are the same. So you've got a particular context within which this change is going to take place. Now, if you're particularly thinking of buying some technology, it's probably likely that the vendor will take you to visit some reference sites. Yeah, you go on a reference site visit. So if you're a bank, for example, buying a new core banking system, maybe to visit 2 or 3 similar banks that have a similar system. Or if you're a manufacturer looking at putting in place some sort of product management system, again, you go and visit some similar companies. What you got to remember is that your organization, even if you are a bank and you're visiting reference sites that are also banks, your organization will have a completely different culture, probably different processes, ways of working, different history. So that all comes into bear. So even though you might see a great Oracle implementation, you've got to remember that your context is different. And therefore, how you're going to achieve the benefit that you've seen maybe in the reference site is going to be quite different from how they've achieved it. I don't know how we're doing here. Because I kind of need some visuals just to show you how we start to build a network that's going to be, I think, very, very powerful in building that benefit realization plan. Okay, well, technical problem. Is there anybody from IT in the house? Yeah, okay. We can take a short break. Are there any questions? Anybody, any questions? Yeah, maybe you want to.
So you're advocating to have a look at the whole strategy and find building something and going forward, testing it, and then really funding that. So
yeah. I'm not discounting. I'm saying that would be part of the process. So in building these kind of tools for thinking, for example, that would be part. There would be tools like some sort of agile approaches, prototyping, where you're doing some experiments, where you maybe identified a potential startup with a technology that you might find useful, where you then work maybe with them, maybe build a proof of concept. So that's, no, I'm not discounting that absolutely at all. And this is what I'm saying, and what I try to emphasize, that building your demand and supply strategy is not something that you do, and then after 2 or 3 months, okay, we finished that, let's come back to it in 2 or 3 years' time, which has often been the case in terms of corporate strategy. They say, now we've got our strategy for 2020. In the digital world, things happen so fast that you cannot do that, the strategy, the digital strategy is sort of an ongoing conversation. And that's part of the conversation is experimenting, is learning. And that's why I showed you the John Lewis funnel, for example, because they're continually evaluating new technologies, continually experimenting with new ideas. So it's a never-ending process.
Yeah, I feel like companies get so much work into the process of finding out every possible opportunity, and they lose the energy to continue forwards.
Yeah.
Maybe there needs to be.
Yeah, you got.
You need some trick to
be sensible.
continue that energy.
You need
implementation project.
Yeah, no, you need to be sensible. I think, yeah, I mean, you can, we have this phrase called analysis paralysis. You can just analyze and absolutely. So it's kind of, it's not, I've had lots of experience in building strategy, so I know you don't need to go into massive great depth, which you can. It's kind of keep it at a level, and that's not in too much detail, but yet it's not too superficial. So it's kind of through experience you sort of get a sense of where that level lies. But yeah, I think that's again a key message, is that you don't want to analyse the depth out of the tools that you use. Yeah.
Okay, two questions actually. The first one, are you going to give us some references? I mean, some names of books or something like that we can read later?
Yes, yeah. I actually have written a book.
Maybe your book. If possible, this would be great.
Yeah, yeah.
And the question is that actually.
Well, I just thought that what I'll do is I will, to boot them, I can send you some readings, some references that you can then make available to everybody. There is, I have written a book, it's in its 4th edition now, the Strategic Management of Information Systems, Building a Digital Strategy, which details all the tools. And I think we've got you've used it, the book, haven't you?
Yes.
So I've got one of my advocates over here who's used the book. I don't know if you want to say anything about it.
About the book or the
book?
strategy?
Yeah.
Well, in our group, when we started the reorganization of the information technology organization, we used that book heavily. And the first encounter with the book was your presentation in Microsoft event so many years ago.
10 years
in Barcelona,
ago,
10 years ago. It helped a lot because it was basically linking the business into information technology so that you can design the processes in regard with that and get the benefits out of that. Today we call it transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday it was reorganization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that the book is available on Amazon or whatever.
Actually, we are ready, but I still want to ask.
Far away, yeah.
Innovation, I mean, are we missing it here? Or is it not in our scope? Why don't we mention innovation? I mean, digitalization fine, but without innovation.
But I think innovation is at the core of my argument. It's all about looking at innovative ways. For me, innovation is about harnessing the capabilities of technology maybe to do things differently. And that differently is the innovation. So for me, innovation is that innovation technology more than the innovation on that business side.
Of course, this I don't speak about the product technology.
No.
It is given.
Yeah.
Okay, understood.
Okay, yeah. So innovation is at the core.
Exactly.
It's at the core. So I was let me just go through. There was a slide. This is where we had again just to re-emphasize. This is vendors. This is a paper cutting that I took from the Financial Times. This is from Oracle. It's about 10 years ago. And what this is the front page. What we're saying was start today and have global CRM in 90 days.
It's lies.
Is that lies? So is that misleading advertising?
Yeah.
Well,
Misleading business people.
it's misleading. Because if you're a business manager, if you're a sales director, and you know you've got problems with customer management, here's Oracle saying, when you buy our product, our Oracle CRM or Siebel, before the summer ends, all your problems have disappeared. That's what they're saying in 90 days. Now we all know that maybe you might be able to deploy the technology in 90 days. Maybe. Although I used this slide with a group of Oracle executives, and they said to me, Joe, that's misleading. It's now 17 days because we have a cloud offering. So technology you might be able to deploy in 17 days. But of course, what about the business change? Which is where the big challenge is. New processes, work practices. What about getting all the information right? Your training. That's where the big challenge lies. But again, coming back to the mindset of business executives, this is what they want to believe. This is what they want to believe. And this is what they'll do is they'll cut out the advertisement, they'll hand it over to the IT director and say, listen, Oracle has said this. And this is what typically what happens with outsourcing. Again, a chief executive goes to a presentation by somebody from IBM, and he's disappointed with somehow the value that he believes the organisation is getting from IT, and he says, let's get IBM to do it. IBM could say they can do it better. But again, what I said earlier on, even if you outsource the supply side, you can't never outsource demand. You still need a strategy. You're still going to have to build an operating model. You're still going to need projects and programs. So all the things that you're currently not doing that are leading to the disappointment, you're still not going to be doing them. Again, that's another problem that I see.
Yeah, it was Oracle yesterday. Now it's consultancy companies saying digital transformation 6 months.
Yeah. If you're slow, 6 months. Because we have this magic bullet thesis. Yeah, somehow the technologists will develop robust technology. And if a problem with your supply chain, we can fire the bullet at the supply chain, and the problem disappears. So it could be with analytics, big data today. You've got SAS. They say, we've got the solution to the problem. Or SAP will come along, we've got business objects. Or you've got Salesforce, we've got Salesforce. That is the solution. I think that in my work with executives, if there's one word that I could ban, it's the word solution. Because what it does do is it gives the sense that somehow IT has the solution to the problem. All IT can bring is a particular capability, and you sort of show what those capabilities are. The business has got to develop complementary capabilities. So going back to my Oracle CRM, Oracle can bring capabilities, but the business has got to develop complementary capabilities. And I think this is the area where the business does not recognize that it's not the technology that's going to address the problem. You've got to build these capabilities, and together, that's the solution. It's not IT in isolation. So again, this is just the relationship I talked about. IT building, nice Gantt chart plans, and really the benefits that you're looking for. You just hope somehow they're going to occur. There's no direct relationship. So for me, benefits that you're looking for from digital cannot be delivered without change. they cannot be delivered. And similarly, change without benefits cannot be sustained. So if they're not getting any benefits, therefore the changes are not going to be sustained. So it comes down to a challenge of managing the change in order to achieve the benefits. Now, I'm kind of writing a book at the moment with a colleague, and he's interviewed the Auditor General of British Columbia in Canada around digital transformation. And this is just a nice quote that John Doyle made. He said, "Why is it that every major transformation initiative always seems to end up being managed as an IT project?" And we're seeing that with digital transformation. You know, starts off as, oh, this is a business-driven initiative. And then 3, 4, 5 months later, it's sort of seen as an IT project. Yeah? And I think one of the reasons is that in most companies, where does the IT project management capability reside? In the IT department. So the project management capability is in IT. So you have volunteer from IT, program manager. And after 3 months, whatever, you know, it's seen that it's an IT project because Boolean from IT is running it. Yeah. So, but I think that the business gets comfort from the fact that IT is bringing the solution. IT is bringing the digital transformation to us. It's going to bring that transformation. And I think what we need to do is reframe the digital challenge. So for me, we need to see digital not as about investments in technology. And I think this is critical. Again, another takeaway. Digital is not about investing in technology. Digital is about investments in change, not investments in technology. And change that is getting ever complex because it's been enabled and shaped by digital technology. So this is, again, I talked you through this already. So we're looking to satisfy the digital objective. You know, again, we've got the functionality. What the technology does is it provides capabilities, functionality that enables and shapes business changes. These business changes then we hope will deliver positive outcomes, and these positive outcomes will deliver benefits, and if we satisfy these benefits, then we have met the investment objectives. So we're sort of making investments up here to get benefits and achieve investment objectives, and we're sort of hoping that what happens down here will actually do that. So we can sort of see the challenge is sort of managing the changes and managing for the achievement of the positive expected outcomes. And that's what I sort of really want to, as I said, focus in on. Over 20 years ago, myself and some colleagues, we sort of addressed this particular problem. And what we did was we kind of coined the whole area of what we call IT benefits management. I don't know if you've come across it. And we built a whole approach and a toolkit. And I just want to give you a quick overview of the approach and share with you just one of the tools from the tool bag that I think will kind of help you really get to grips with why IT initiatives, why digital transformation projects actually fail. So this is how we defined IT benefits management. And again, I put the IT in brackets because actually this applies to any projects and programs that you might choose to run in your business. So it's the process of organizing and managing such that the potential benefits arising from the use of technology are actually realized. That's what benefits management is. So you're proactively going out and managing to deliver the benefits that you expect. So it's not just about deploying the technology. We've got 50 years experience in doing that, and IT professionals are really, really good at deploying technology. What we're emphasizing now is the other side of the equation, the benefits. Putting in place a plan to realize the benefits and executing on that plan. So this is the approach that we developed. Very, very simple approach. Starts off with identifying and structuring benefits. So now we've got our investment portfolio. We're running projects and programs. So for each project and program, what are the benefits we're looking for? Let's identify and structure them, express them in business terms. You know, where in the organization are they going to occur? Who in the organization is going to be the beneficiaries? How are the benefits going to occur? When will they occur? So this is all about helping us build what I call a benefits realization plan. Once we've built the plan, we then execute on the plan. You know, that's making it happen. We review and evaluate, and then we look for further benefits. So you can see there's lots of iterative feedback loops to the benefits realization plan. Because once you've got the plan, any changes in scope, for example, or any changes in the project or program should be reflected in how they impact the benefits. Are you going to get more benefits? Or are you going to get less benefits? Also, I'm a very, very strong advocate that building the plan is part of the business case. Because as we'll see in a moment, if we don't understand what it's going to take for this transformation initiative to be a success, it's going to be very, very difficult to really accurately cost the business case. I'll demonstrate, as I said, that in a moment. So that's kind of the model. And then what we can build then is a whole tool set around that. So as you work around from structuring the benefits to actually getting to build a benefit realization plan, we've got lots of tools that you can use. What I want to do is just introduce one tool to you today. And it's a tool that I think you'll find very, very powerful. It's a tool that we call the Benefit Dependency Network. And the idea of this tool is to link up the investment objectives with the expected business benefits, with the changes that are going to be required, and the technology that's going to enable and shape those changes. So that's the tool. Let me just, first of all, explain the logic, and then I'll give you some examples. So let's say one of our business drivers is to increase the return on capital employed. Business driver. Technology on its own is not going to do that. But how can we increase the return on capital employed? Well, maybe by increasing profits. Okay? Now, how do we increase profits? Well, we can sell more, we can reduce our costs, and we can increase our margin. Now, there are ways we can increase our profits. How do we increase sales? So maybe launch a sales drive, attract new customers, improve marketing. There are ways, or increase our productivity will help us reduce costs. And the technology then might enable and shape these activities. The point that I'm trying to emphasize here is that we're looking for this here. That's our investment objective. We're making an investment in technology. And what I'm trying to show is actually that the technology itself doesn't do this, won't deliver this. It's like my Bosch sensor. It doesn't do anything. We've got to now figure out what are we going to do differently now in our business. And then it's by doing those different things that are enabled by the technology that's going to give us the benefits. Okay, that's sort of the logic behind the network. So what we've got are a couple of concepts. We've got some business drivers, we've got some investment objectives, we've got some business benefits, we've got some changes here, and then we've got some functionality provided by the technology. So let me just quickly run through these concepts. So business driver, what is it? It's essentially something that's critically important to our business. It might be that customer pressure, for example, or it might be maybe there's new legislation. So if you're a bank, insurance company, you've got Solvency II, you've got to do something. Or maybe you've got an initiative, one IBM, for example. It's one of the critical business drivers. Return on capital employed. That might be, again, our business driver. Investment objective. So this is an organizational target for achievement agreed for the project in relation to the investment. So we might want to reduce risk. We might want to provide accurate forecasts, reduce duplication, simplify something. So it's some objective that we have for the investment that we're making. We then detail the benefits. So what are the benefits that we're going to get? Are we going to improve our cash flow? Are we going to improve conversion rates? Is it going to impact our debtors, for example? If we're an insurance company, is it going to reduce the cost of processing claims? So again, there's some benefits. We then have some changes that we've got to make. Now, when we developed this tool, we just called everything change. But some organizations that were using it said, actually, you know what? It's quite useful to make a distinction between the once-off changes and the more ongoing changes. So the more ongoing changes we sort of call sustaining change. And these are, and then the once-off change are the enabling changes. So the difference would be, for example, an enabling change would be a new process blueprint. The sustaining change would be the execution of that process. That new process is more ongoing. Okay? So some of the sustaining changes might be, for example, here, seeing and viewing the customer. That's a change we need to make. A new way of interfacing with suppliers. Whatever the changes are that we need to make that's going to lead to the delivery of the benefits, we need to identify them. Both the enabling and the sustaining. And then we've got the IT enablers. So this is sort of the, let me just take you through. So we've got the drivers, investment objectives, benefits, sustaining changes, enabling, and the IT functionality. So that's sort of the logic. Now let's look at an example. And it's a real example. It's some work I did quite a few years ago now with a European paper manufacturer. This company had 700,000 customers in 9 European countries. They were looking at, again, they didn't call it a digital initiative, it was essentially an investment they were going to make to improve their relationships with their customers. You might call it a CRM system. They sort of refer to it as a customer management system. So what I've done here is I've just shown 2 of the investment objectives. I think there were about 10 objectives they were looking for to be achieved with this investment. The first objective is to improve the effectiveness of advertising and promotion spend. Second objective, to increase sales volume from new customers. Okay, this is typical objectives that you might see from an investment in a CRM type application. Okay, the next stage was, well, what are the benefits? So again, I think there was about 18 benefits that they identified. Just for simplicity purposes, I've listed out 4. Reduce costs by avoiding waste on irrelevant customers, increasing the response rate of advertising and promotion campaigns, increasing the rate of follow-up of leads, increasing the conversion rate. You sort of get the picture. These are the benefits. Then it started to get difficult because the leadership team, they knew the business drivers, investment objective, benefit. Then I said, okay, now what are you going to do differently that's going to achieve that benefit? As I said, that was a bit of a struggle. But over a number of weeks, we sort of built up a network. Oops. And this slide here then is just a partial network of what was quite, as I said, a more complex network. So you can see here, these are the investment objectives from the earlier slide. These are the benefits. You can see now what we've done is we've got mapped out all of the changes that would need to occur in this organization to deliver in these benefits and achieve the investment objectives. We've also identified here all the technology enablers. So this is all the capabilities that will be provided by the technology in order to enable and shape these changes. Yeah? So you can see, because it's a dependency network, okay, that if we don't make this change here, let's say we don't make this change, okay, because, I should just move on, and I'll come back to why I don't make change. Because we also need to identify benefit owners, so who in the organization will be the beneficiaries, what measures are we going to use, and also here, for all the changes, who is going to be responsible? Okay, who is going to be responsible? Evidence of achievement. How will we know that the changes that we need have been made? And what about the timescales? Okay, so we're putting on a lot of additional information as well on this network. But let's say that this change doesn't happen. If this change doesn't happen, what happens to this benefit? We don't get it. Okay? And similarly, if this change doesn't happen, we don't get this benefit, and therefore we can, because it's dependency, this change cannot happen. If this change cannot happen, this cannot happen. It's going to impact the extent and scale of this benefit. So now, I think for most of you, it probably will become very, very clear why digital transformation initiatives either fail or struggle. Yeah? Because where do we focus attention? Here. We focus all the attention here, getting the technology in. The piece in the middle, we sort of assume that's going to happen. If you don't build a benefit realization plan, a plan to realize these benefits here, if you don't do this, what's the likelihood of it happening? Pretty slim. And I think this explains why 70 to 80% of IT digital transformation initiatives struggling or failing for this very reason. Does that make sense? Okay, so we've got the strategy, we execute on it, and I said this is one of a number of tools that we can use. So it's very, very, very powerful tool. It's very, very visual. Now, I'd also like to say something else. So we've got our, when we read, how do you read? You read from left to right. Okay, so we do all this work and we present it. Now, what you don't want to do is, you don't want this investment in digital to be seen as an IT investment. You don't want it to be seen as being driven by technology. You want it to be seen as being driven by the business. So when you present it, okay, when we developed the tool, we kind of developed it working backwards. When you present it, you flip it round. Okay, now what you're saying is, these are the critical business drivers. I haven't listed them for this chart. These are the critical business drivers. These are the investment objectives. This is the benefits we're looking for. This is all the change now we need to make in our business, across all our business, if we're going to get the benefits. Oh, and yet it's just some technology going to be required. So it's very, very visual. A lot of companies that use this then for their projects, they often build big pictures, particularly to demonstrate to the business, not to IT, on the business side, that these are all the business things that need to happen if this transformation is going to occur. Just to show you, again, this is a partial benefit dependency network for some work that I did for a retailer. It's actually Asda, which is part of Walmart. A couple of years ago, they were looking at rolling out RFID technology across the organization, and EPC, which is electronic product coding. Essentially, one of the challenges that they were facing as a retailer, particularly with an internet channel, was click and collect. You know, a lot of internet retailers now offer click and collect. So that means is you order online, and then you go to the store and pick it up. Okay, the problem was, you order online, it shows online that the store has the item you purchased in stock. You go to the store, and guess what? It's not in stock. Okay? And the problem is the difficulty of tracking inventory. Okay? Now, RFID tags and RFID technology has been around for a number of decades. The problem is it is quite costly. So in manufacturing and even in retail, RFID tags were used at a pallet level. So this is a retailer that was going to use it, the first retailer in the world that was going to use it at an item level. Okay, so every item that would now be in the store of clothing would have a tag, an RFID tag, which meant that it could be traced and lots of benefits. So what we did was, I worked with them over a period of a few months as we built up an understanding as to what would be required, what changes would need to be made for this investment to be a success. The actual investment in technology was pretty minimal. You know, the technology was pretty mature. A lot of the change would need to take place in the supply chain, in suppliers in Vietnam and in Asia. Because if they didn't sew in the correct tab into these items, when it reached the store, of course, that would show inaccurate inventory. So we mapped out, you know, what are the key business drivers. Again, this is just a partial, very, very small snapshot. These are the key drivers, investment objectives, again, some of the benefits they were looking for. We mapped out then, you can imagine all of the changes that would need to take place, and then the technology enablers back here. And then from that then, they built the benefit realization plan and a kind of a transformation plan in order to make sure that these required changes actually would happen. Oops. I just want to show you one more example and then we wrap up. This is Microsoft. And a number of years ago, Microsoft decided that they would like to improve collaboration, global collaboration across the Microsoft organization. They also felt that, you know, they had a tech-savvy workforce, and what they would do is they would roll out collaborative tools on everybody's desktop, and that would improve collaboration. So that's what they did. 6 months later, they kind of felt, you know what, we spent all this money, but we don't really see any improvement in collaboration, which is probably what you would expect. Okay? So they asked me if I could sort of help them maybe get a better understanding as to what they would need to do in order to make this investment pay off. So I said, well, you've made the investment, why don't we just build a network? So I worked with a team over a period of weeks, and we built up a network of what Microsoft would need to do to realize the benefits of collaboration. And just again, just to show you, here were some of the key drivers. Poor collaboration across the organization, need to improve performance, work smarter, not harder. Again, a list of key drivers. Here were some of the benefits they were looking for, like improving collaboration, teams, blah, blah, blah. Here's the benefits. Okay? So we got to the benefits then, as typically happens, this is where they started to struggle. How do you identify, what are the changes? So the network was very complex. So this is, as it stands, is still complex. I just chunked it up, just for illustrative purposes. But you can see, these are all the changes now that Microsoft assumed would happen. They sort of assume we make this investment here, and we get these benefits. That was their assumption. And now they understood that actually this is going to require significant changes in the Microsoft organization. In the end, it resulted in a 36-month, a 3-year program of work in order to make the necessary change. A lot of the change was around culture, but it was also process and how people were evaluated, type changes as well. 36-month program of work in order to make sure that what was needed to happen in the Microsoft organization happened to deliver in these benefits. So that's the benefit dependency network. I think it's quite a really, really powerful and visual tool, particularly if you're working with business people, getting them to see that this digital investment is not about technology, that the success will hinge on how well they manage this piece in between. This can only be managed from within the business. And this is why I was saying earlier that digital is a team sport. The CIO, CDO, IT director can only ever deliver in this functionality. The business changes can never be delivered in by the CIO. The business changes must be delivered in on the business side by business executives. So the network, this helps us identify the rationale for the investment. These are the why we need to make this investment, and this is how the benefits will be delivered and be achieved. Just to show you, I'd say, well, we've got project management methodologies. And again, I know from my work with companies is that business managers are often confident and comfortable in relation to projects. They have a project management methodology that's followed by all projects. You've got to remember, project management methodologies deliver in projects, not benefits. Okay, let me repeat that. Project management methodologies deliver in projects, not benefits. Okay, here we're talking about delivering in benefits. So what I say is, I'm not saying we get rid of project management methodologies or your risk management or whatever. What I'm saying is now that benefit management complements. It's an addition. It's the piece that's been missing all this time in relation to your investment in technology. And again, my experience is that this is a mindset challenge. It's getting business managers to move away from seeing the digital transformations being about technology delivery to being about benefits delivery. Where when we talk about value for money, you get the accountants focusing on the money piece. Who focuses on the value? We're now saying we've got to focus on the benefits, and we actually got to build a plan to make sure those benefits come in. We got to move from an expenditure proposal where there's a loose linkage to business needs. If you don't build a network, how can you factor in the costs of making the changes? Because we all know that the cost of making changes is not cheap. So if you don't understand what those changes are, therefore we can't accurately cost them, and therefore they don't appear in the business case, and therefore the business case is not an accurate reflection of the true costs of making this investment. Again, we're moving away from an IT implementation plan to a change management plan. That does incorporate technology deployment, but it's a lot bigger. The business manager is an onlooker and victim to a situation where the business manager is involved and in control. And finally now, because we know the changes that are going to be required for this transformation to be a success, we know exactly what functionality we need So therefore, we can go to the Oracle salesman, the IBM salesman, the Azure salesman from Microsoft. Say, listen, this is all the functionality we need. We don't need to buy the whole suite because we now know what functionality aligns up with what change we need to make in the organization. So that's a kind of a quick run through, that implementation piece. So we've got our strategy. We then do, our prioritization. We then need to kick off some projects and programs. And as I'm saying, yes, we still need project management, but in addition, I'm emphasizing maybe we need to think about the benefits that we're looking to deliver and put in place a plan in order to make sure that those benefits are actually delivered. Some of the key takeaways. First of all, this is an information revolution. It's not a technology revolution, it's an information revolution. It's a revolution in how you as an organization choose to harness information. That's the revolution. It's a revolution that begun right from day one. The key reason that companies started using computers in the first time was to help them better manage and control their information. That was the key reason. And that still remains. It's the information revolution. Some of the key concepts, demand and supply. I think that's a very, very powerful concept, demand and supply. Again, think about that physical versus digital defined world. So in a digitally defined world, there are particular characteristics that you need to be cognizant of. Remember also that digitization impacts costs. The transaction costs are significantly reduced. That's leading organizations to move away from being vertically integrated to unbundling the corporation through transparency, etc., etc. Seek out innovative opportunities. So, innovation around projects, or should I say products, innovation in terms of services, customer engagement, digitized solution, customer experience, innovation and management process. It is, to come back to the question, this is all about innovation. Look to express problem or opportunity in information terms. Again, remember some of my examples of startups. They see a lot of problems in information terms. So what they do is they try to characterize, first of all, what is the problem? Can we express it in information terms? And then can we build something that actually helps us address that problem that we define in information terms? And again, this notion of information asymmetries is very, very powerful. Asymmetry is a situation where one party to a transaction has more or superior information than another. Okay? Technology can reduce information asymmetries, and it does, but in terms of opportunities for being innovative, for maybe getting a competitive advantage, you might look to create information asymmetries. And disruption comes in many forms. It might be that cycle of insurance, moving from the yearly cycle to its pay-as-you-go. That in itself is disruption. New entrants competing with superior information. The Googles and Nest, coming into the smart homes business based on superior information versus what a traditional energy provider might have. And then strategy in a digital world. Remember, you can't analyze your way to the future. You often have to reinvent it. Competitive dynamics are no longer linear. They're exponential and disruptive. And your strategy needs to reflect that. So it's sort of like moving from a candle to a light bulb. As Henry Ford is reputed to have said, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. And he's bringing something radically different. So again, I would, maybe cause you to think and step back from, being customer, maybe being too customer oriented. Because if you ask your customers what they want, they might say, I want this faster horse. And yet, maybe somebody's going to bring something radically different called a motor car. You've got to frame the digital conversation around your digital engagement with customers, the digitized solutions that you provide to customers, maybe smarter employees and processes. So this is your internal stuff, new lines of business, and trying to relentlessly simplify your operational backbone. As I said, I don't have firm data, but my belief is that today operational excellence is no longer a strategic option. It's table stakes. And then ambition for growth may not be the problem. The biggest hurdle may stem from an inability to catalyze the organization into action. This is all about it's the change, transformation is a journey. And I think, my final comment to re-emphasize a point that I made is, investments in digital, see them less about investments in technology and more about investments in people. Because ultimately the success or otherwise of the investment will hinge not on the technology, but will actually hinge on how well you and your organisation actually manage the necessary changes. So that's me done. I don't know if we have any time for, we probably have 3 or 4 minutes if anybody has any questions. We have a panel anyway afterwards, so maybe over lunch you might dream up some questions. Yes?
Just a very, very quick comment. You just mentioned that I think they're very important for the way of thinking of corporations. You just said don't ask the customer what they want. The question is wrong because you ask the customer for a solution. The customer doesn't know the solution. So you have to ask the customer what is his
problem. That's
so what is your
you think it's just talk.
What is your problem? It means is your problem to get from A to B, or is it a problem you want to have a bigger home?
No, that's a point. That's a good point. So it's if you go to the customer looking for solutions, the customer will have what they think the solution should be. But if you go and say, well, what's your problem? That's a different approach. And the customer can be maybe poor at articulating solutions, but is great at telling you what the problem is. And if I go back to 365 FarmNet, having grown up on a farm, I know that the farmer does not want to own the tractor or a combine harvester. The farmer wants to maximise the yield, to maximise the profit from the farm. That's what the farmer wants. So I think, as you were saying yesterday, but yet these agriculture machinery companies see themselves as selling machinery because that's what they think the farmers want. And I think if you look at all the great examples of business model innovation, Rolls-Royce, you talk to Michael O'Leary from Ryanair, he doesn't want to own a massive maintenance, repair and overhaul operations. Absolutely not. What does he want? He wants predictability. And that's what Power by the Hour gives him. It gives him predictability. It enables him then to accurately calculate costs, and then he can then price his seats accordingly. Yeah?
Can I ask a question regarding the first presentation that we have previous?
Yes, of course. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, actually it was a phenomenal presentation. I just thank you for that. I want to ask, assume that you will be having a similar discussion with you 2 years later or 3 years later. Do you think what will be changing in the short and mid-term from the technology perspective that will be feeding digital transformation? Because when we think about what we are hearing right now, we are hearing blockchain, you mentioned that. We are hearing about digital twins, you mentioned that. But you didn't mention, for example, artificial intelligence that everyone is talking about right now. Is there an intention for that, or is it just not in your agenda?
No, I may not have mentioned it, but it was on my list. Machine learning is part of. I mentioned machine learning as part of AI. These are all. So let's say the harness blockchain, for example. If we do get some use cases, I'm doing some research at the moment with some colleagues at MIT. And I was on a call yesterday evening with them. Part of the discussion that we had was around blockchain. And one of the guys that was involved in the conversation is the director of the MIT Media Lab. And what he was saying, which I think resonates with my experience as well, is that he said, when he looks at the investments that are being made in blockchain at the moment in terms of blockchain startups, he said it's like 1998. Do you remember 1998? That was the beginning of the dot-com boom. He said it's like 1998 now. But he said the problem is the technology is 1989. It's where the internet was in 1989. So it's that immature. So I think that's the blockchain. So where we be, I think that would my presentation change? It hasn't changed in years. It hasn't. My core presentation, my core thesis hasn't changed in 25 years. Technologies have changed. And I think, we've got to embrace the blockchain. The blockchain will provide new enablers. And it might mean that, for example, that you have, let's say, a more decentralized organization, for example. Now, a decentralized organization means that a traditional organization will have to transition to a more decent, and that's going to demand change. So the change will still be necessary. You mentioned AI. We've got to remember AI and machine learning, let's say, and business intelligence. You know, all of these technologies, all they're doing is they augment human cognitive processes. That's all they do, they augment. So with your machine learning, with AI, with analytics, you've got to remember that business intelligence doesn't reside in the data warehouse. Where does it reside? Here, in the minds of managers. And it's so easy for business managers to believe that AI is going to give them the answer. AI might make some suggestions, and again, AI hasn't progressed very much over the last 20 years. AI might make some solutions or make some suggestions, but it's up to the business manager to interpret those solutions. So it augments human cognitive processes. That's all it does. Can we call for lunch? So again, thank you very much for your attention. As I said, all the slides, I'm making materials available. If anybody wants any additional information that's not made available, ping me an email. I'm very happy to share it with you. As I said, I hope you've got a few takeaways, and thanks for your attention.